Hey Jen, what are some disturbing movies you've seen besides like Balto?
Besides Bolt. Dude, I think one that disturbed me was Megan is Missing.
Oh, you saw that.
Yeah, when I was like 14.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh no.
Have you seen it?
No, I've heard about it on a couple of disturbing iceberg videos. Never actually watched it.
Yeah. It's really disturbing because it's filmed like found footage. And of course, when I was young, I thought it was real found footage. And they do like a whole essay scene full on. And it's just, I couldn't sleep for years without like a nightlight because of it.
What is Megan missing about?
It's basically from what I remember is this one girl is Megan and she's like the pretty girl, she's like the popular girl and she ends up getting a webcam and talking to this guy and he's supposed to be this 15-year-old kid. Her friend, I forget her friend's name, but she has a camera and she's making vlogs and she's just kind of doing whatever and she's kind of more of like I would say like the Christian girl, like the very conservative vibe and Megan is more of that party girl. And then Megan all of a sudden is supposed to meet up with this guy, and no one ever finds out where Megan is. And then her friend, I think, is trying to figure out where she is, and she's filming these vlogs. And then that girl also goes missing. I don't know if I want to spoil the movie, but it's filmed as if it's found footage, so it's all vlog in a way, but very like 2010s vibes, and you find them where they're kidnapped. It's very disturbing the way it is. Yeah.
Huh. That reminds me of another really disturbing movie that I had the unforeseen delight of watching. Perhaps one of the grossest films out there. It's called a Serbian film, which is
Ugh.
yeah, it's all about like this guy who's a struggling porn star and he's really just going down a route. He's a family man though, but not a family man in a good way.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah. And I'm laughing because it's an uncomfortable subject, but it's notoriously very, very graphic violence and sexual content, but
It's almost like fetish almost.
it is. There's a lot of pedo and necrophile scenes, and I mean the whole point of having something maybe fetishy is kind of getting into a topic that is disturbing and that we might talk about in today's case, which is about snuff films and snuff production. So, if you've never heard about snuff films, they're basically somewhat of I don't know. A lot of people don't think snuff films are real.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah. A snuff film, particularly, is a film that depicts a real life murder or a crime. There's a lot of sexual violence that tends to occur within these films. In today's case, we're going to be talking about just that. The Dutroux case. Initially, it was just kind of perceived as this lone man named Marc Dutroux, and I might be butchering that last name, so I'll just be calling him Marc. But he is Belgium's most hated man. I was talking to my Belgian friend about this, and she was like, I fucking hate him. So a lot of the public, or what the public is led to believe, is that these are the horrific crimes of a lone pedophile. But this case is perhaps a little bit different from most cases that we've talked about, as there are multiple different testimonies from victims alleging that there is a vast and protected child abuse and snuff network involving high-ranking officials, powerful individuals across finance, politics, law enforcement, and even intelligence services who have facilitated and participated in and actively covered up child abuse, torture, and murder. This is the Shadow Networks. Hi, and welcome to the Decomposing Flowers podcast. We're excited to have you here with us as we delve on some truly intriguing and, in this case, very disturbing true crime cases. I'm your host, Kira, and with me is Jen. Everything we say in our podcast is information that we have gathered from testimonies, interviews, documents, and what we believe to be trustful sources. Any opinion we say is our own opinion. This is very important in today's case, as most of the information, besides everything to kind of do with Marc, is alleged. Alleged means it has not been proven in the court of law, so therefore we can't consider things guilty. However, I am allowed to express my own opinion as an individual. If I think something is shady, I should be able to speak up about it. And there is a lot of shady stuff that happens in today's case. We're going to be discussing the Marc Dutroux case and the possible involvement of a shadow network, a dark network that there's been some whistleblowers, but the whole thing has not been blown up yet. Before we get started, I just want to give a lot of trigger warnings. So this is the most intense case that we have covered on this channel to date. It's really important that you're in a safe space mentally for some of the subject matter that we're going to be discussing today. There is a whole load of child abuse. There is predation. There's pedophilia. There's body... What is it called?
Mutilation?
Mutilation, yes, thank you. There's basically anything you can think of that is awful. It's in today's case. So if that is not your cup of tea, please check out another one of our episodes. Take care of yourself. Get yourself an ice cream. Enjoy the day. We'll catch you in our next episode. But with that being said, let's get into today's case. So, Marc Dutroux was an unemployed electrician with a documented history of sexual assaults. He was apprehended on August 13, 1996, in a connection with a series of kidnapping of young girls across Belgium. His arrest quickly led to the rescue of 12-year-old Sabine Dardenne and 12-year-old Laetitia Delhez. You can insert how to pronounce the name right there where I said it, because unfortunately I'm not good at pronouncing names. From a concealed dungeon in his basement. In the subsequent days and weeks, the grim discovery of 4 other girls, 8-year-old Julie, 17-year-old An Marchal, and 19-year-old Eefje, in various properties owned by Marc. It plunged Belgium into national mourning and outrage. How can something like this happen? I thought Belgium was... Okay, I'm going to go into a stereotype here. I thought it was like the home of like waffles and chocolate and everyone is just like so cheery. It's crazy that we have someone who built his own dungeon and buried children alive over there. I'm just saying, bad people exist all over the world, but this one takes the cake. Already, we kind of know that Marc's criminal record was extensive. He had been convicted in 1989 for 5 sexual assaults, receiving a 13-year prison sentence. However, he was let go after serving only 3 years, a decision approved by then Justice Minister Michel Walphet in April 1992. Despite Marc being known as a manipulative psychopath within the justice system, he was well known. The initial public focus centered on Marc as a single, deprived individual, the most disgusting human that could ever exist. Or at least that's what the investigators wanted the public to believe. The sheer scale and brutality of his crimes, coupled with the apparent police failures to apprehend him earlier, despite explicit, and I will get into this, I cannot tell you how explicit the warning signs were that this man was a fucking serial killer, that he was kidnapping children. It was literally like someone knocked on the police doors and being like, yeah, this guy, he kidnapped someone. And they were like, who? I don't know what you just said. Even his own mother, Marc's own mother, who in 1995 claimed that her son was holding one of the girls hostage in one of his own houses. His own mother. Wow. Went to the police. I'm not shitting you on this one. It's wild. So, Marc, he had somewhat of normal childhood. I'm not going to get into it because I don't really care too much for the man. He had somewhat of a normal childhood. I mean, I think his parents got divorced, whatever. But during the late 1970s, he found employment as a scrap dealer and made money by selling car parts, but later on, he also kind of was a pimp as well. He was just not a good guy to be around. From 1979 and onward, he was convicted for a variety of petty offenses. I'm putting petty in quotations here. The offenses were things like assault, drug dealing, trading stolen vehicles, and this is just a disgusting side note about his hobbies that he would get into. So he regularly visited an ice skating rink where he would deliberately trip or bump into young figure skaters in order to touch them.
Ew.
Yeah. In October 1980, he visited a particular skating rink and got into a physical altercation with another person. He was just banned from using the skating rink. The other person was charged with assault and battery after trying to protect themselves and their girlfriend.
Wow. Of course.
Marc's criminal career was escalating, and it was escalating not only in the sense of violence, also sexual predation. He had a lengthy history of physically abusing women, including his previous wife. But on the 14th of December in 1985, he abducted Excel. During her testimony, she told police that his accomplice, Peter Graham, told her that he was part of a gang led by two gang leaders, an Italian and a crazy stupid one. This man was Jean-Val Pedogram, who admitted to taking part in the abduction. He said that he had abducted Axa with Marc and Michelle Martin, who eventually became his wife, Marc's wife. Talk about just, and I'll get into the wife, because she's also a fucking disgusting human being. Like everyone in this case, everyone I'm going to talk about, just the worst of the worst of the worst. But this wasn't their last abduction. Oh, no. On the 7th of June, 1985, the first proven abduction, and I'm saying proven in quotations, the abduction of 11-year-old Sylvie took place. On October 17th, so not even a few months later, the pair abducted Marina. She also identified a third man who took part in her abduction, and he appeared to be in his 50s. This man was never found by the police. On January 17th of 1986, Catherine, aged 18. On December 1985, Marc abducted Elizabeth. So sorry, this was the year before, prior to Catherine. So these things are happening in quick succession. They're getting quicker and quicker and quicker. We have June, October, December, January. Pedogram told police that Dutroux filmed Elizabeth naked and took pictures of her. At the beginning of February 1986, Martin, so his previous wife, Dutroux, and Pedogram were arrested. This had been to a large extent due to Pedogram giving out a large information of himself in conversations with the girls they had kidnapped, which had been enough for the police to identify them. The three were convicted on April 26, 1989. Marc received 13 and a half years, Pedogram received 6.5 years, and Martin received 5 years. Dutroux received a harsher sentence because he had also committed several robberies with Pedogram, and he was found guilty for the brutal robbery of a 58-year-old woman in which he tortured her. And I won't get into the torture because it is awful, but it is not good. Despite this grave record, Marc was released from prison in April 1992, having only served a third of his 13-year sentence. Following his release, Marc began constructing concealed dungeons in the basement of his various properties, notably in Marseille. These cells would become the sites of unimaginable horrors for his victims, who were imprisoned and repeatedly sexually abused, forced to participate in the production of child pornography videos. Interestingly, this is important to note, in prison, Marc managed to convince a health professional that he was disabled due to mental illness. This way, he was able to collect public assistance consisting of $1,200 a month from the Belgian government. He also convinced professionals that he needed sedatives for sleeping problems. Dutroux went later to use them to sedate his victims. He was very, manipulative. He acquired various land holdings with the money he gained through auto theft. And I'm putting this in quotations, by the way. We're going to get into this because this man had 10 properties. But they're saying in court that he was able to get all this money through auto theft and pimping. That's it. During the next 4 years, he abducted and sexually assaulted an unidentified number of girls, some of whom he allegedly murdered. Along with several accomplices, Dutroux sold children into slavery. He trafficked girls into other countries, which we will get into. But for now, I want to talk about the main victims of Marc. On June 24th, 1955, 8-year-old classmates Julie and Melissa were kidnapped after going for a walk. They were then taken to Marc's house in Marchal. He kept them imprisoned in a dungeon which he had created on his own. He repeatedly sexually abused them and produced child pornography videos of the abuse. 2 months later, in the early hours of August 23rd, Dutroux and his accomplice, Michel Lievre, kidnapped An Marchal and Eefje Lambrecks. The 2 teenage girls were on their way back to their holiday home following a night out. With Julie and Melissa already in the dungeon, the 2 girls were being kept in chains in a bedroom. In September, according to Martin, the 2 girls, Anne and Eefje, were drugged and brought to another place, where Marc and his accomplice, Bernard Weinstein, killed them by burying them alive.
What? Oh.
Yeah. And it's important to remember Bernard Weinstein. He's a name that we're going to talk about very shortly. Around the time of Anne and Eefje's death, Weinstein and a man named Philippe Devers stole a van and hid it in a hangar. After it was found there by the hangar's owners, it was taken away by the police. Dutroux and Weinstein suspected that Devers and his friend Pierre Rachau had betrayed them. On the night of the 4th of November, they wanted to interrogate them about the van. Dutroux and Weinstein lured Devers and Rachau into Weinstein's home in Jumet and drug them and really just abuse them. I'm not going to get into it, but before leaving to go to Pierre's house to search for clues about the van, they found his girlfriend, Benette Jadot, who they took with them back to his house and questioned before they went and picked up another person. While they were away, Jadot escaped, alerted a neighbor who called police. With Weinstein wanted by police, Marc made the decision to prevent his capture by killing Weinstein. He kidnapped Weinstein and held him in a dungeon in his house, the famous Marchal house, sometime between November 13th and 20th. We don't exactly know the date, but during this time, he let Julie and Melissa roam free around the house. After feeding Weinstein food laced with rohypnol, Dutroux placed clamps around Weinstein's testicles until Weinstein told him where the money was hidden. He then continued his kind of MO and buried Weinstein alive on his property. According to Marc and Martin, which was his wife, Julie and Melissa were still alive in the house during the time of Marc's arrest in December of 1955. Dutroux ordered Michel to leave food and water for the girls in the dungeon each time they ran out. Michel had neglected to feed them, later claiming that she was too afraid to go into the dungeon. Melissa and Julie starved to death. Marc initially stated that they were still alive when he returned home following his release from prison on March 20th, 1996. According to him, Julie died that day and then Melissa followed suit 4 days later, despite his efforts to save her, rather than take her to a fucking hospital. An expert asserted in court that they would not have been able to survive the entire time Marc was in prison due to the amount of food and water that he said that he had given them. This thing makes my blood boil, but I'm going to tell you about the search for Julie and Melissa. As the police visited Marc's house, the same one where he had a prison in the basement, they visited not only once, but twice. Once on June 13th and once on December 13th of 1955 without being able to find them. During the course of the searches, the girls' voices were able to be heard while they searched in the cellar, but the police did not follow up on the source of the voices. Instead, detectives accepted Marc's claim that due to the ongoing construction in his house, that it was a drainage system rather than screaming girls in his basement cells.
And they just believe it. Oh my.
Yes, it's crazy. Even worse, though, they collected several videotapes. And on these videotapes, it had one where Marc was building his basement prison. They videotaped that. And then another one was an essay of a young girl that they had on video. But the police did not review the footage before they gave it back to Michelle.
What?
Yeah, there is so much miscarriage of justice that happens in today's case. So if this gets you mad, the rest of the case is going to be even fucking worse. On the morning of May 28th, 1996, they continued to kidnap children. They kidnapped 12-year-old Sabine, who was cycling to school, and she went on to describe her time in captivity in the basement, where she spent most of her time in the dungeon, as awful. She was starved and repeatedly essayed by Marc. Later that same year, on August 9th, they kidnapped a 14-year-old girl named Laetitia, and I probably mispronounced that, but it was right when she was walking home from her local swimming pool. On August 13th, so that same month, Dutroux, Martin, and another one of their associates was arrested after an eyewitness tagged them for kidnapping. An initial search of Marc's house proved to be inconclusive, but 2 days later, Marc and his friend both made confessions. That same day, Marc led the police to the basement where Sabine and Laetitia were held. Luckily, these girls were able to survive. They were rescued, but during the entire search of his properties, and I'm not even shitting you, hundreds and hundreds of commercial adult pornographic videos, along with a large number of homemade sex films Marc had made with Michelle, were recovered from their properties. It's important to note, but he also traveled to Slovakia, and I don't know what he did there. It's really hard to find on the internet, but he did travel there to rape girls. And he convinced their mothers to let the young children come to Belgium with him. And we'll get into this later because I believe this was probably network activities, but we'll get into what the network is in a moment. He likely did more than just SA girls there, but we'll likely never know what he all did there. In his dungeon, there were countless hairs found where the two girls were being held. Also, important to note, Judge Langlois refused to have them tested for DNA evidence, even though the leading police investigator, Michel Bourlet, had begged them to let these hairs be analyzed because he knew that there was likely more perpetrators involved. Out of the 6,000 hair samples that were found in the basement cellar, there were 25 unknown, in quotations, DNA profiles discovered. So that's 25 potential either victims or assaulters. Marc's own statement during the trial, while potentially self-serving, he claimed that he was a low in a powerful pedophile network, and he said that he was going to be protected. He consistently denied to being the murderer, despite earlier confessions to killing his accomplice and doing these crimes. He is now charged with life in prison, but to this day, he says he has done no wrong. So you're probably thinking, this dude, he has been unemployed throughout this entire time. How on earth can he afford over 10 properties? I know about you, Jen. I don't own any properties. I likely never will in my lifetime.
I don't think I would.
I don't get how some unemployed electrician is able to do all this. But it gets wilder because he was in fact worth about 6 million Belgian francs. While he had all of this wealth and property, pretty much, he still received his public assistance of $1,200 a month.
What?
Yeah, still. throughout this entire time. There were also large sums of money.
So dumb.
Sorry, what'd you say?
I just said, like, that's just so dumb.
It is.
Like, it's the smallest thing of this case, but still.
Yeah, you have a convicted rapist, and you're like, you know what? He's just sick. We better give him some money.
Yeah, he needs money.
That'll fix it. That'll fix it. Anyways, there were large sums of money coming in all sorts of different currencies going into Michelle Martin's account, his wife, which were conveniently linked to a period of time in which the disappearances of the abducted girls were happening. Both the transfer and the values of the 6 properties that Marc owned suggested that he was being financed by something larger than him. Investigators, though, say this is no, it's just because he was selling stolen cars. Interestingly, his wife, who also knew of the abuse and supported her husband with the kidnappings and the assaults and the videos and everything, she was only charged with 30 years. And after doing about a third of her sentence, she was approved to serve the rest of her sentence in a nunnery. She didn't complete the rest of her sentence, but she is released and she's free now. This happened back in 2022. So she's out there.
Oh.
In wake of...
Oh my... Ugh.
Yeah. Not a cute look. In wake of Marc's arrest and the ensuing national shock, a bunch of shit happened at the same time. There was a number of victims from alleged pedophile networks, which gave collaborating testimonies. A lot of these victims were identified with authorities with the number X. So, for example, X1, X2, X3, or if they gave their permission later on, their legal name was given out to the public, given that they were the consenting age now. Because a lot of the victims in today's case are minors. They are not of age. These women began to come forward and testified. These witnesses did not primarily implicate Marc himself, but rather a whole bunch of abusers. So there's going to be so many names in today's case, and I'm sorry for that, but it gets a little confusing. But there's so many people across various sectors that were name dropped. There were judges, commissioners, bankers, businessmen, politicians, and even high nobility, kings, queens, princes. So Marc's case inadvertently opened a deeper investigation and conspiracy, revealing a black network. We're going to get into it. An important name in today's case, as we discuss the network, is Michael Dutroux, and he emerged during the Marc Dutroux case as a central and highly controversial figure. He even wrote a book proclaiming his innocence. He's free. He's out walking, or I think he's dead now. I don't even know. Either way, I hope he's fucking dead. He's widely considered to be an alleged link to the higher echelons of this network. He was arrested shortly after Marc under suspicion of supplying ecstasy pills as payment for the kidnapping of Laetitia. Both Michelle Martin and his accomplice Michael implicated Dutroux, stating that Dutroux kidnapped girls according to specific clients' wishes, with Martin expressly naming Dutroux as one of these clients. Dutroux is also directly accused by victim witnesses in the ex-witnesses that I'm going to be talking about very shortly. And he also participated in the murder of Christine Van Hees in 1984. Dutroux was ultimately acquitted of direct involvement in the kidnapping and murder of Detroit's victims. This is so fucking weird because the jury initially found him guilty, but the judge overruled their verdict, saying, "No, you guys don't think he's guilty. He's innocent."
That's, oh my god. Why even do, like, a jury?
Just shows sometimes there's sticky fingers in places, I guess. And we'll talk about the judges in today's case even more later on. But this decision led to widespread accusations, and don't worry, the Belgian people were reasonably and understandably pissed off about this too. Dutroux' acquittal on the most severe charges might just be the protection from the network, positioning Nahul as a key figure whose continued freedom was paramount to the survival of the network, because he would have had knowledge of the higher echelons of the network. This suggests that his role was too sensitive to be fully exposed to a public trial, indicating that there was a level of influence and protection within the legal system for him. So he also was involved in one of the bigger clubs called Dolo. It was a location in Belgium where important police commissioners, politicians, lawyers, and directors of several well-known companies kind of interacted with gang leaders, alleged pedophiles, and individuals involved in human trafficking. In 1997, Claude, or Max, van der Bricken, which was a former valet of Dolo, testified that several Dolo visitors, including a person named Dutroux and Hole, aptly named Dutroux,
I was gonna say.
were involved in pedophilia rings which kidnapped children. He states that he heard Nahul and Dutroux speak about cages for children made to watch them suffer. So they would get children, put them in these cages, and watch them suffer. They then would make videos specifically from the USA that would show African American children that were put in these cages, tortured, and burned alive. Oh my god. But he's free. He was acquitted. There were a lot of failures as part of the whole investigation. Primarily, one of these things was called Operation Othello. It was a surveillance effort on Marc's house just before he was arrested in August 1995 to January 1996. So they had Bob, which is Belgian FBI. There was an officer named Rene. I'm going to mispronounce that. He's highly controversial. Despite being aware of Marc's history as a convicted pedophile, he ignored crucial information from informants who had told the police about the kidnapping that Marc had told them about. There were witnesses that told him about his methods, and he even ignored Marc's own mother that warned the police that her son was holding on to girls. Operation Othello was remarkably ineffective. They had video cameras, oh yes, and they aimed it at his home, but they were used less than 2% of the time. Operations were suspended nightly at 10 p.m. So during the time where crime occurs, they did not have cameras on him, allowing for kidnappings and an escape attempt by a victim to go unnoticed. During the searches of his home, the team overlooked items like vaginal cream, chains, different kinds of weird devices that might have been used in torture, which is just things you keep kicking around the house, I guess. So even after his arrest, they failed to find letters that were hidden by Sabine in the basement after she thought she would die. Despite this extensive record of extreme incompetence, he was awarded with a new position as local police commissioner. Thanks for doing a shitty-ass job. Here's a promotion. Thanks for letting this pedophile go amok. Good job. Further compounding these issues, there was an examining magistrate, Martin Dowry, initially tasked with finding Julie and Melissa. She went on vacation shortly after her appointment to find these children and didn't find a replacement, and this affected the investigation's efficiency. The sheer number and nature of these investigative failures, it's a cry for help. Like, you have children underneath the floors screaming, and you think, oh, that's fine, it's just the walls. Like, all the signs were there. It's more than just incompetence. It points towards a deliberate inaction or active sabotage. The question shifts from if there were failures to why these failures occurred and who exactly benefited from these failures occurring. Obviously, the network did. And that's where we're going to leave it for today's case. If you want to hear more, come for next week, where we're going to continue this discussion into the network. And let me just tell you, it gets even darker from here.